Welcome to the MMIA podcast.
How the devil are you, John? You good?
I'm all right. How are you?
Not bad.
So, in today's podcast, we've gathered together some of the questions that we get asked, some of the subjects that we get asked to talk about, and we've put them together and to look at the common denominators between them, right? And what we've come out with are 5 myths about back pain relief that you still believe, because Paul and I are both manual therapists as well as movement instructors in various modalities. And obviously, over 30 years of experience, you get some common denominators of questions and conditions and situations that people find themselves in. And of course, that teaches us what we need to learn to go to the next level with those people. And within our scope of practice and our anatomy lab experience and so on and so forth, we're seeking to answer questions. And some of those questions are people who are under a kind of a spell or believing in a myth. And back pain is one of the biggest issues that we come across. So we've got 5 myths about back pain relief that you still believe. And I'll go through that list and we'll answer each one. But I think we're going to save the first one till last because it's such a key. So let's try. These are the 5 myths. Core training will fix it. Another one, strengthen your glutes. Myth number 3, stretch your hip flexors. Oh my goodness, there's some keys in this one. Oh my goodness. Number 4, you've got to walk 10K steps a day. That's everybody's goal. We've got some very special things to say about that one. And lastly, lie on your back to exercise. We're going to go through those, but we're going to shift the order because the core training will fix it one we're going to leave till last. So Paul, strengthen your glutes. Why would you strengthen your glutes? Why would you think strengthening your glutes would work? Or more poignantly, why wouldn't it?
Well, this is the thing about back pain is an epidemic, a global epidemic. It's getting worse every year. The cases of it are increasing year on year, and the predictions for the next 10 years are off the chart. So if it's such a common thing, how would then doing a classical approach to something that is not alleviating this epidemic of a very similar outcome, why would you keep doing the same thing? It's like the worst business plan ever created in the medical and fitness world. If your back's in pain, fix and strengthen things that you're determined to be weak and make things stronger and less mobile, and then you'll have more integrity. And the glutes are number 1, yes? As a walking structure, we should have great bottoms so we can push and go for a walk. But invariably, when we strengthen our glutes in certain facilities and in different modalities, walking is not the way we strengthen the glutes. It's basically done in a very stationary scenario. It's done very much in a bilateral way. So we're doing squats and lunges at the same time. And we don't focus on how these glutes are designed to work and collaborate during locomotive motions. And this is the problem. We've turned a human being that is incredibly skilled at locomotion and moving in a variety of directions, styles, and speeds. And we've made it a stationary statue that creates different shapes and poses to animate strength. And I think that's a big mistake.
Brilliant. And also, I know one of your bugbears, just to talk about one thing, I've also seen people strengthening their glutes, lying on their backs and feet flat to the floor, knees bent, squeeze the glutes and push up. And this can compress the pelvic ring. It can disorganize the flow of forces through the pelvis. And I don't know about you, but I think I've spent more time telling people not to do that and explaining why not than I've spent showing them what to do where they don't cause any of those problems.
We're trying to not amplify an area that is clearly the victim in the lower back area generally and the spine and various associated relationships with the spine and the lower back, like your pelvis, like your hips, like your knees, going up into the neck and the shoulder. They all emanate from it, don't they? And what happens is we tend to drive pressure into it in order to stabilize it so that it can take more aggressive approaches to strengthening it in the future. And what your spine really wants and your back really needs, and it could be coming from very much an emotional issue, like who knows why you have a bad back. There's 1,000 variations and different factors that create this outcome. But what it really requires is subtlety, and it needs kindness, because the reason it's defending itself, the reason you've done the damage there, the reason it's ended up in this particular predicament is because it's become the victim of how you've moved you. And it has taken a force inappropriately, repetitively, and it's all about understanding sequencing from the ground up to the ceiling.
So, given that key to why it doesn't work, let's have a look at the opposite of that, which is stretch your hip flexors. Oh my goodness. Now, this is a very yoga-oriented kind of idea. First of all, the hip flexors are usually considered to be the psoas, the iliopsoas, as it's called, and the thigh muscles being part of this. So you often see lunges and warrior poses and things like that done to stretch the hip flexors. How is that different from strengthen the glutes?
Well, correct answer. How is it different? How is it appropriate? Firstly, where we know where they live and how they grew together from embryonic beginnings to where they are now. So traditionally, you look at a hip flexor in your book, and it just looks like it's hanging there like a big piece of umbrella, and it wraps off the spine and then drapes through the thighs. And of course, they create this lovely lifting of your thigh in front of you. But we know, because we've investigated and we've tested and researched it to such a level now, we know the psoas major is, yes, it plays a role in flexion of the hip, but that's not its primary role. And because of how it grew with you and developed through and amongst you and your spine and your intestines, it is part of the diaphragm. And its very nature is because it can't move from where it is. You can't lengthen something that is grown from a much more solid structure. That's like saying, we'll remove the roots of a tree and we'll stretch them out because the tree starts to fall over. You can't. It's integral because of how it has developed within that lumbar area of the spine. So what it is, in a better way of describing it, is it's more like the guide ropes of a parachute. If we assume the parachute is the diaphragm, and then the relationship of the guide wires that come down to the parachutist is your psoas major and hip flexor group, and then your pelvic girdle is the parachutist.
Well, it's the harness around the parachute, isn't it? For sure.
And what you want them to do is to rise and descend together. But if you keep pulling at those guide wires, those hip flexors, and you try to stretch them to alleviate the shortened state that they're in, and apparently the cause of your back pain, you take away the very characteristics of what it's designed to do and how they're designed to do it.
Absolutely brilliantly said. And oh my goodness, and the difference that we can give people when we give them the means to restore that role is just amazing. And that takes us on to the next one, number 3. Walking 10,000 steps a day is your ultimate goal to relieve back pain. I've actually seen that stated on various social media, and it's almost like we all get up in the morning and you should feel seriously guilty if you haven't done 10K steps. And I think there's slightly more nuance to that.
Well, I think it was initially stolen from a statement. Somebody said, I think a shoe producer or something in Japan. However, it was stated as a marketing explanation, do 10,000 steps a day. But I think it's a great way to say we motivate you to move often. And are you moving often enough? Because it really is important that we are moving frequently, and that's a good thing. But there's a million ways to do 10,000 steps.
Absolutely. And just to say one thing, Paul, there's walking and walking, right? So you could listen. We've done a fabulous podcast on walking, and we mentioned the Monty Python's ministry, Billy Walks. And we take that into the realm of all the different animals that we walk like. So do have a look at that. But without going down into all those things about walking, what would you say? I know you're saying it's great if you get walking.
But then again, is it great? That's the thing, right? Are you going for a purposeful walk And when I say purposeful, is it you're going with your family, your partner, your children, or whoever you're going for a stroll with?
Or even on your own because you want to go, because there's something worthwhile. But is it when you impose these numbers and it's like we're doing body by numbers?
It's about movement by repetition. So you can become very
Yeah.
good at doing something very poorly the more frequent you do it inappropriately. Or you can
Yeah.
think about time and quality. And that might be a quality of time with yourself or with another guest on your walk. And that can be at any pace you like. Yes. Maybe you're going out for a chat. You want some fresh air. Maybe you don't want to compete in the Olympics. You just want to walk around the park. However, if you want to incorporate all of this more appropriate influence of your glutes, of your hip flexors, of your ability to create motion and locomotion, then you have to understand tempo and stride pace and rotation and all these other elements that make an efficient and effective walking pattern that incorporates all of the things you must do to have efficiency of this tissue we call human beings being. And that, are you rebounding through your walk? Are you recoiling efficiently as you walk? Are you recognizing the pattern of walking that is maintaining your ability to walk often and frequently without inhibition? Do you know how to refine it so you get the most out of how you walk, where you are walking? And make it a great thing. So it's one thing to walk in the mall where we are in Dubai. Everything's in mall depending on the temperature. And people shuffle like penguins. I've seen them inside doing it. And then you get the opportunity to go outside. The temperature's changed. So it's more friendly to be outside now. But they're still walking like they are in the mall. They're still shuffling like penguins, just faster than outside. Instead of opening the stride on their arms. And they're breathing more purposely. And then they're creating a lot more effective walking, which will really integrate all of these amazing systems that must coexist within.
And it is remarkable. My experience is that people are wearing Crocs and sliders, and so the foot also is clawing to hold on the shoe, which makes it even worse because well.
But we come back and it then explains the first one, right? That if you've got a bad back, you must strengthen your glutes. But if you have a habit and you've created an established pattern of grabbing the floor with your toes, like a bird grabs whatever it's perched upon, because it's got no butt, because it has wings, then your toes become your bum. So now trying to strengthen two things that are trying to do the same role is why you're going to amplify this dysfunctional movement pattern you've already established. And you'll just make it worse. So it's very important that they're wearing the right footwear in the right environment and they're gliding through walking and they're producing that locomotive push so that the bottom responds and develops properly.
Brilliantly said. Now, the fourth one, lie on your back to exercise.
I understand why people like lying on their back because it feels great to take the pressure off and you lie and take away vertical effects from a vertical world we live in. And you lie down and it's comfortable and you can prop the head and the arms and the thighs and you can get organized and relieve pressure. So that's nice. However,
Yeah, and you need that, right? You need to relax if you're in back pain. You've got to do that. But what we want to do is also feed the body's ability to do the vertical,
exactly.
right?
So the thing is, the problem is a lot of people train today in those supine or prone positions on the floor, but they don't translate what they did on the floor into a vertical scenario. And it's that learning skill, isn't it? I've learned a skill, but how do I now use it in real time and real opportunities that exist within my day-to-day life?
On that note, let's go to number one. Core training will fix it. A lot of core training is lying on your back doing crunches or twists or thrusts.
Stationary planking, yes? And this is the thing, the movements that you're replicating on the floor are not going to replicate it in a vertical scenario. And this is the misleading myth about core training. If I'm trying to emulate and mimic a bench that is hard, can take force in a horizontal position, planks are fantastic. But if I try to sustain it, what you do, you create a really poor neurological relationship with all of the very tissues that are going to respond to your spine when it is in a rotational, bending, or combinated movement.
Or even an upright movement, right? You've got back pain. You're coming down the steps, you've got back pain. and you're not going to do squats and crunches. And okay, let's start with one key thing. Do we or do we not have a core?
No. Apples have cores. The earth may have a core. What human beings have a fabric that is as a continuity from top to bottom and in 361 degrees, as you say. And this thought process that we can isolate an area in the center of what we see as a top to bottom structure, and we go, if we strengthen the middle, it will fix everything around it, is where it gets really misleading. And it's not wrong to have aesthetic looks and have really hard, firm, delicious abdominals and have this really great, robust pelvis and a nice diaphragmatic movement. They're all things that we should aim to have for sure. But in a global motion from toe to tongue, from hand to hand, from front to back, from top to bottom and bottom to top.
From ground to crown, as I say, yeah.
But when we isolate it and we get fixated on making something very, very strong, what ultimately happens, you make yourself superficially and misleadingly strong in that scenario where you're on a success, but it doesn't translate to how those tissues truly respond to locomotive and life effects. And they still trip up because there's no subtlety in planking or crunching. It is aggressive and fast and vigorous, or it's harsh and it's tolerated and it's sustained. We threaten our body in the subtlest way. Most people's backs go when they're turning and taking off toilet paper while they're having a wee or a poo, or when they're cleaning their teeth and they go to rinse their mouth. And now they've got this combination of movements through a spine that is used to bracing for success or being in flexion bias to success, and is asked to tolerate it until it can't. And quite simply, if core training worked for the masses, nobody would have a bad back.
So true. And what we do, and this is so key, is through this misunderstanding. I mean, yes, with a threat. Now, this is why military training and a lot of our training foundations have come from the military, right? That's where the research has been done. So that's where the conclusions have been drawn. And that's where the training happened. I know BKS Iyengar, his work, beautiful yoga, stunning understanding of the body. If you are a young man in the army, great. And I've known some of the most brilliant yoga work, people like Angela Farmer, who has taken that into the feminine. Vanda Scaravelli, my own lineage of yoga, took that work from these people directly and modulated it, changed it, made it their own, and understood these subtleties, which I think we're losing. And what that leaves us with is 5 myths about back pain relief that our clients believe when they come in. And we have to unravel the story and the history and show them through the work that we do how to reintegrate and restore what I think is the original remarkable human blueprint. And we're not actually imposing something on the body. We're exposing something through its natural form. And even if you have to sit a lot during the day, even if you have to drive a lot in a car, even whatever you have to do, there's ways of managing that really beautifully, really intelligently, and in such a way that when something does go wrong and you accidentally trip, your body knows how to right itself. When you're a carer who has to somehow help someone in and out of a wheelchair, you know how to do it, and it doesn't cause the problem that caused the problem that exacerbates the problem.
So I think therein lies the problem, because people associate exercising mimicking life activities, and that's just not the case. They're similar, same but different, as we say in this part of the world.
Yeah.
And it's really important that we focus on finesse rather than aggression. It's okay to have the ability to be aggressive and to ramp up the temperature and force movement occasionally. Of course, that's necessary in different circumstances. But your body can't recover and tolerate and restore quality and optimal movement if it only does it at one pace. And that's why we find these victims within the body, these areas that have to tolerate this repetitive attack of the living tissue and wonder why eventually goes, yeah, I've had enough. I can't be doing this anymore. And emotionally and physically, it goes, I gave you all the warnings I could. I gave you all of the feedback and the red flags I could. I'm stopping the game. And that's when your back goes, enough. And it is like the straw that finally broke the camel's back. And then the way you rehab it is almost the same way as you injured it. And this is the crazy,
biggest myth of all, right? The way you rehab it is often the way you injured it in the first place.
If we have elite athletes that are trying to recover and they have access to all of the rehabilitative studies and techniques in the world, but they're always managing their exit. They're always managing their finish of that place until somebody who's less injured, but as elite replaces them, like the modern day gladiators. We cannot base our long-term health aspirations on their short-term successes in the general population. I think so.
If you want more on this, please click the subscribe button. Come and listen to us. If you're listening to the podcast, hop over to YouTube and you can see us live. Thank you. Thank you for your time. And please don't forget, any questions you have, stick them in the chat below this video or email us at info@myofascialmagic.com. And one way and another, we will answer your questions or do another podcast based on your requests. Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care.